Great. So I think we have a good house here. So before starting up, I just wanted to introduce you to one of my colleagues. I thought that it would be good to have an alternate viewpoint when we are discussing about the strategies which should be used, but I don't know why they are not used in a popular way. So I have with me Muzammil, who's been working with a lot of IP councils and in-house teams that are responsible for licensing of patents, and he would be sharing his views with respect to what people are doing a lot and what they are not doing. So Muzammil, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hello everyone. So as Deepak has just introduced, I've been working with a lot of councils, and as Deepak said, he thought that it would be a good idea to have a conversation on why some of the patents are not being utilized by the big companies in the industry.
Okay, great. So here is how we are going to move ahead today. So the first thing that we will talk about is that how people generally license or think about licensing right now. So that means we can say what is a traditional approach that is being followed, and then what a lot of people might not be doing. So we'll be talking about the solution in the second part of this webinar. So let's talk about first part. So when I talk about first part, that is how people think right now when they're thinking about licensing. So I've been working with a lot of different corporations, large, small, medium size, over the period of last 10 to 12 years. And everybody is not, even though they don't have a licensing strategy, when I talk about some companies because they don't want to license or because there are a few industries in which people don't want to get engaged into a battle, or you can say a licensing battle, because let's talk about insurance sector. They don't want to go against their competitor because it can lead to a patent war. So similarly, there are a few other industries, we can call it as maybe logistics. Nobody wants to touch each other. There are a few industries, for example, adhesive. They don't want to touch each other. Even, every company is individually building its patent portfolio, but nobody wants to go offensive. And therefore, even though they would be having a licensing manager internally, they don't do a very serious licensing. It is because of the company strategy, and it is all fine. Now, there is another type of companies which are heavy into IP licensing. So when I talk about heavy into IP licensing, it means that their IP department generates a lot of revenue from the licensing. And there are a lot of popular names among that. It could be LG, IBM, or Siemens, Ericsson. There are a lot of these kind of companies that are heavy into licensing, and they license it to their competitors. They license it to every company that they can think of. However, when we have worked with a lot of these companies, their core objective is to think about that who among our competitors might be using our technology, and we can go after them. And we have heard a lot about these cases going into litigations, whether it is Apple, Samsung, or Oracle suing Google, and all of these cases that are happening up. But there is one strategy that they don't think of, which can avoid all of this litigation and can get good licensing revenue as well. So let's first talk about how companies might be thinking about their licensing activity right now. So I'm talking about traditional. A lot of you might already be aware of it, and if you're not aware of it, you can just type in the message in the message box or in the comment section, and we will answer those questions as we go forward. So if you are not sure where is the message box, you would see a control panel. Go to webinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. It's kind of floating. And there you will find one option for asking questions. Those questions will directly come over to us. and we are going to answer all of them in the end. So just keep on typing those questions whenever you have, and we will answer them. So coming back to the strategy that what people are following right now. So when the companies have a lot of patents, for example, 500 plus patents or 1,000 plus patents, mostly they manage their portfolio by doing the clustering of them so that it's become easy to cluster the patents. So Muzammil, have you came across such kind of things where companies have asked you to cluster because they want to keep a track of licensing, or it is something that they do it themselves, or they have, is it part of the licensing activity? Have you experienced that?
Yes, Deepak. There have been a lot of companies, which have, directly or indirectly asked us to, cluster the portfolio that they have into different technology areas. And, the interesting thing is that whenever we cluster those technology areas, they pick one and ask us that which of these patents may overlap one of our competitors, and, we want to earn, revenue out of those patents. So yes, clustering is, is being asked, and, it's a norm these days in all of the companies, for licensing the technology.
Okay. But I think there's one very interesting point over here. I have seen, as you said, I think I agree that clustering or better management of the portfolio is an important aspect. But I have found that a lot of companies, when they cluster their patents, they cluster it based on the technology. So when I say that, technology, that means, what kind of technologies are used by the patent, and they try to manage their patents by keeping them together. There is one very important point, and why I want to specifically talk about is because I received a response from one IP counsel based out of China, and he handles a very large patent portfolio, and he sent me an email. He said that we are in a process of valuing our portfolio, and what do you think is the best strategy to cluster or to categorize our patents? And rather than suggesting them that you should cluster your patents based on technology, I said that what you should actually do is you should cluster your patents based on the product lines that you have, which I have found that a lot of people are not doing. And the problem that comes up is when they're later looking from the licensing perspective, they cannot see that what patents we should license or what patents we have which we are no more using on our products because the products have graduated to the next degree of feature set and we are no more using it. They can easily separate out those patents for licensing or for selling purpose. So this is one very important thing which I think we all should take care of, or internally suggest that if you're trying to manage or cluster our patents, we should keep a product-based categorization rather than just the based on the technology. But anyway, this was something offhand I just thought to mention because it was a very important point. So for example, if we already have the cluster, so what is the next step, Muzammil, that you generally follow once you have the cluster with you?
So let's suppose if we have 1,000 patents and out of 1,000, 300 patents are related to a particular technology. For example, telecommunication. So the client generally asks that why don't you just filter out which of these patents are the top patents and should be taken for licensing. So the next step is to rank those patents based on the potential that they cover in the market.
Okay. So that means if we talk about clustering, so first clustering could be, just based on products or patents. So it may look something like this. If you are doing it based on just the technology, it could be manual technology, or it could be based on you can see the classes, or it could be something look like this, which is more refined, and you can directly focus on that. We are no more using nickel alloy. So let's just take off all of these patents and focus only on titanium related patents. So it becomes more easier to do that, but this cannot be achieved through class-based clustering. This is much more refined version of that. Anyway, our focus is not clustering. We'll talk about this later. Our focus is that once you are done with the clustering, your next step is to rank the patents. And we are not going to go into ranking right now because I assume that all of you might be aware of it. There are various methods of doing the ranking. Some people use statistical method for doing that by taking into account a lot of factors like citations or claims and all of that. We are not going to talk about that. Some people do it manually. For example, you can see the example that I have shown. You can see that here it has been done manually by looking at how complex are the claims, what is the discoverability issue. That means how easy it is to find infringement, how large is the market. And generally, these type of factors are more of subjective nature, and you rank the patents by collectively identifying a score. So Muzammil, there was one very important aspect that I can see here, though we are not talking about ranking, but I can understand infringement discoverability. That means how easy it is to identify an infringement. I can understand claim complexity as well, but why you're rating the market potential, that means how large is the market? How is this related to licensing?
Yeah. So Deepak, what happens, when you want to go ahead and license a particular patent, what you are targeting, you want to earn a lot of money from a particular patent, and you want to target a good market. For example, if I say that a patent of yours, you can license it to a very small company, you won't go ahead and license it to a small company. But if I in contrast to that, I say that this patent of yours is a gold mine and covers a very huge market, and you take it, make it a representative patent, take it to the other companies, take it to all the big companies which are out there, and you're going to earn millions out of a single patent. So that's why market potential is very important aspect when you are selecting the top patents. High market potential means the patent is a good patent.
So basically you mean that when I'm licensing, I should get a good royalty out of that. Why to pick okay, so this kind of filtration mechanism. So that means once we combine all of that, you rank the patents, and here I can see you have divided into different levels, level 1 and level 2. Okay, so this is an idea which you give, how the current clients or most of the companies right now figure out good patents from their own portfolio, and so that they can take it to the licensing stage. And I've seen sometimes they might not be ranking it. I've seen they involve their technical engineers, and they just directly ask that which are the good patents from our portfolio, and I've seen that they get direct answers. So different companies have different processes. So I have seen this kind of process being followed when the portfolio is really large, and even a technical guy cannot make sense out of it. So they pick each cluster one by one and try to figure out good patents in all of those clusters by removing the patents which they are not currently might be using. So that is about all of what we are talking about is the traditional strategy or the current strategy that people might be using. We have not yet come to the an alternative strategy that can probably be used. So here is how the ranking has been done. So we are done with the ranking part. Now you're talking about doing an infringement analysis. So what is that? I mean,
yeah. Once you're done with identifying the top patents by ranking them, for example, you have 5 patents which you have identified in a portfolio of 100. There are 5 patents which are level 1. Level 1, when I say level 1, they have high market potential, low claim complexity, and high discoverability. So what you're going to do, you're going to spend more time digging more information and identify the products which are overlapping those companies.
Oh, okay. So this is you mean that, once you identify good patents, you have to actually identify the companies whom you can license it. So this is basically, identifying the companies that might be using your technology, and then probably, making the proof also for them. That means building a claim chart or evidence of use chart that can be taken to these companies by, and say that you are using our technology. Here is the proof. So this kind of documentary proof that might be done. So, so this is like a standard process that is there for the that company might be using right now. And just to share, with you a lot of work that we do is of this traditional type. It's not of the new type that we are talking about. So now coming to the new thing that can be used, and we are going to, I think talk about by taking few examples. So rather than talking theoretically, we thought that we will share by taking some actual examples. So when I was having a discussion with Muzammil on this topic, I said that today there's a webinar and I'm going to talk about that. He said that, let me share these examples, and he has come across these examples while we were working on a lot of different type of projects. So these are the ones which he has identified himself when, during the course of working on a lot of different projects, and he thought that these are the ones which should actually act as a case through which a lot of other companies can learn. So here are 4 examples, and let's, we have also mentioned the company names, all of them from big companies, so we cannot say that such kind of decisions might be taken by people who are not much aware of the strategies, IP strategies. So these would be the ones who are handled by some pretty experienced individuals. So Muzammil, would you like to take all of us through the patents one by one, or you would first like to share something about why only these patents, why not any other?
Yeah, sure, Deepak. So, before I take you to the patents, I'd like to share one thing that, I really like this, title of this slide, that, but, once you're done with the conventional approach, some high value patents are overlooked. Means, even if you are, a lot of companies are, doing the analysis or, hiring other companies to do the analysis for licensing the patents, still there are patents which are being overlooked, and a lot of those patents are gold mines, are the high value assets. So which are those assets? So Deepak, let me tell you, these are the assets, these are the patents which are actually not related to their core domain. When I say the core domain, it's interesting. Core domain is the one where the product line of the assignee or of the same company lies in. For example, let me take the example of the first company. If I say Technicolor, when you take the name of Technicolor, what comes to your mind? The first thing that comes to your mind.
I mean, Technicolor is a company that do a lot of work with respect to, image processing, and doing a lot of algorithms which can bring out. I mean, I know if I use Apple products, and all of the color schemes which are used or the brightness is all because of Technicolor algorithm. I know they are the best in their own domain.
Yeah, exactly. So Technicolor is a company which is more related or more focused towards multimedia and entertainment, and a lot of their companies might be related to image processing into smartphones and software processing algorithms. However, we came across one patent which is out of their core domain, and the patent is related to power line communication. So if I give you a quick overview of the patent says clock synchronization in a power line communication. And when we looked into detail, what we found that the overlapping companies or the companies which are using the technology which is patented by Technicolor are TI, Texas Instruments, are NXP. So all these are the non-core companies. So Deepak, do you think that Technicolor would not have any idea about this patent, or might have not licensed this patent to NXP or TI?
I don't know. While talking, when I have interacted with most of the licensing managers or IP counsels, I've seen that their major focus is on their maybe competitors or maybe the vendors that might be associated with them. So I'm assuming that that may be the case with Technicolor as well.
Well, I'll still give credit to Technicolor because this patent is alive. This patent is still alive, and they can get into the details of the patent and check whom they should license it or not. But this takes us to the next example that we have in here. So the next example that we have is, there is a patent of Delphi. So, the first thing that comes to anybody's mind, if I say Delphi Automotive, then, the company which deals in automobile sector. So this is a company which manufactures parts of automobile. They have this one patent, and this is a really interesting patent. I don't know why they have not, kept it alive. So this patent, Deepak, this patent is lapsed. This patent was lapsed in 2005 itself. But when we looked into the details, we found that all the current companies, actually this patent is overlapping every single company in the world, because this patent generally talks about discharging, battery discharge protection system, which, cuts the overload, or, which just protects the battery to discharge when a particular, after a particular threshold. It's more of like that. For example, after 10%, when you 10% of the battery is remaining in your smartphone, then your camera won't work. So it's as simple as that. So this patent was filed in 2000 by Delphi, and this patent is now lapsed. So that was why I was saying that technically it's still is on the edge. Yes, they have not the patent is still alive, but this patent, when you look at the Delphi's patent, a gold mine, it has been lapsed, and there's no option of reviving it back.
So I think when we talk about the charging, and when we look at this particular the domain, I feel that it might be happening because Delphi might have thought that electric cars would never come up, and this is not something which we'll be able to make money out of it, and they might have let it abandoned. So what I can sense is that before abandonment, we should actually think that can this particular patent be useful in near future or not, and how the wave is going on, how how beneficial it can probably be. So I think this is more from the angle that I've seen companies abandoning their patents which are not related to their core products. A lot of companies do that. It is like a regular exercise that they follow every year. In fact, I was talking to one of the IP counsel when I was in Singapore, and he told me that his question was that, do you have any better strategies that we can follow for our labs, the patents that we are going to abandon every year? And I was surprised, because it was one of his KPI that we have to abandon, so which patents to abandon. And till now, their basic decision making was that let's just abandon the patents that we are no more using, and let's let them go. And what here we can find is that it is not necessary that you should just abandon if you are not using it. There are a lot of other companies, maybe not from your core domain, that means not from an automobile sector, but they may still be using your technology. And Muzammil, I think a better example is about one client whom we were talking to. So if you talk about FedEx, and FedEx has a lot of patents in the logistics space, and they also abandon patents very regularly. And once I was talking to them, and we were discussing about this licensing strategy, and they said that we don't sue anyone, and we just keep it for defensive purpose. And when we talked about that, it is okay you don't license to your competitors, but what about companies like Domino's? They are into they may not be directly in a logistics space, but they use all of your technology, which may be related to maybe quickly reaching out the pizza to the customers. So they use a lot of the technology for which the patents might be with FedEx, but FedEx had no idea, because they were only looking at their core competition. So this is a very, very important point, that licensing doesn't mean only the core companies. And now you'll ask that this seems so obvious. Everybody should be doing it. Now, I will also tell you that why a lot of people do not do it. It is because when we look at the IP department and all the engineering department as well, they are so much into their domain in which their product lies. I mean, they've been working for years. It sometimes becomes very difficult to think that how a company like Domino's, they may license, which is like in a food domain where they might be eating a pizza every day, but how to license them the technology which we are using. And another very interesting example was an insurance company. So we were working with an insurance company, and they also have a an aspect that we are not going to touch our competitor, and it's like that, everybody being silent. But they were very interested in making money out of their patents because they were spending a lot of money in maintaining them. So when we were having a discussion, we told them that why do you only want to look at your competing insurance company? When we did a quick analysis, and we found out that the companies like IBM, companies like Microsoft, were building a very strong insurance-related softwares that they were selling to a lot of large enterprises, which were doing the same type of modeling for which the patents were actually held by the insurance company, that means our client. And it was amazing that they were not considering IBM as something that they can ever license. So it was looking where you have not looked till now and exploring the opportunities over there. So keeping that in mind, let's look at the solution from Hewlett-Packard. I will not talk about this company a lot because they are very, very active in filing the patents, and they file patents in a lot of different areas. And so, Zamil, why you have included this particular example?
Yeah, actually there is something interesting I found in this patent, because whenever HP comes to my mind, I never thought that I would found a patent of HP in hearing aid domain, because that's an interesting thing, that one of their patents is in hearing aid domain, and this patent can be licensed to the top players in the hearing aid, for example Starkey, for example Siemens, or a lot of other companies. However, this patent is lapsed. This patent was lapsed in 2012.
So you mean that it's just been a few years, and if HP would, this patent would have been active, HP could have made a lot of money from this patent?
Yeah, exactly. I feel actually I'm not able to understand that why they filed the patent. If they filed the patent in the hearing aid domain, and after a few years they just killed that patent, so actually they didn't earn anything out of it. They just spent money in filing the patent. They could have kept this patent alive, and I feel right now the value of this patent is it might be in millions.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to that why HP might have filed it, because I found that when it comes to patent filing, any idea that is getting generated from the R&D, it is sometimes very difficult to evaluate the potential of it at the time of filing. So a lot of companies file the patents, initially, if it looks a little bit good or if it has a potential, but they don't do that when actually after it has been granted. At that point of time, their objective is to just see that which are the patents that are related to their core domain, and let them only continue. Rest all the patents, they slowly just abandon all of them. I think I don't know how many of you are aware of it. IBM, which we all know have been one of the top patent filer from more than 10 years in a row in US, abandons around 20 to 30% of their patents in the first 4 years itself. That means in the first 4 years, they abandon all of those 20 to 30% patents. And it was a big question that why do they abandon such a huge number? And whether they not why to abandon, why did they file it at the first go itself when they, then they have to abandon it? And they have been doing it continuously. It's not that just this year or the last year. They are abandoning around 30% of the patents from last couple of years. So that means they are very well aware that they are filing a lot of patents that have no interest. So here, the question is that not that why these such kind of patents are being filed. The question is that if you have an issued patent, you should be very careful when you are abandoning it. And if you are not abandoning it, then even if it is related to your core products, you have to be very careful in terms of when you are looking for or opportunities for the companies that you would want to license. It's not necessary that you should look at your competitors. And I think the better term to use is direct competitors and indirect competitors. That is a better way how we can define the companies who may be using your technology, but you are not aware of them. So going to the last example, which is of Xerox, and so how is Xerox will license to HTC? I don't see any relation with respect to printing and the cell phones.
Yeah, so this goes to the same thing. Deepak, you were saying, you just pointed out that you were talking to FedEx and you told them that your technology is being used by Domino's. So when we are talking about FedEx's technology, it means their core technology is being used by Domino's. So this example is directly related to that. Xerox's core technology, which is related to image processing, scanning the images and all that, is being used by HTC One, the smartphone HTC One. And we have found that the way the claim has been drafted, the way the specification is being written, the inventor had this thing in the mind that this technology would be used by a lot of other companies, not only in the domain of document solutions.
Okay, so you mean to say that the technology was good enough to be applied to a lot of other places as well? It was just that somebody within the company had not explored or should explore, I should say, the completely other products which are not related to printers. Because what I can see is that at that point of time, when the patent would have been conceived, it was more about how within the printer itself you can cluster the image, organize the images, and do a lot of stuff with them. But they would have never thought that this can an alternative technology is HTC. So I think we have talked a lot about indirect competitors. We have talked a lot about abandoning of patents. We have talked a lot about considering those patents which are not related to your core products. So if we summarize all of this, the summary comes out to be that why to only think in a direct way where there are a lot of other branches in which the same objective can be fulfilled. And it does not hamper your company IP strategy also. So what I mean by company IP strategy is, if you want to maintain peace within your industry, you don't need to go after the companies who are your competitors. You can go after the other people as well. So here it's about thinking in a lateral manner. So I think we are very close to our timeline of 45 minutes. So I'm going to leave the next last 5 minutes for the questions. And I can see one of the questions popping up on our screen, which was related to how you can identify this information about platform, where this kind of analysis can be done. What I assume, I think this question has been asked by Raj Kumar. So what I understand from this question is that, is there a way to identify that which are the non-core companies or indirect competitors that might be using your technology? So Muzammil, would you like to answer this question, that how companies can identify this?
So there are two things that I like to share. One thing is that how are you going to identify your patent in your core domain? How can you identify that this core patent can be applied into can be used by the companies, by the non-core companies? So for that, I would say having an open mind is very important. For example, I would say that if an inventor is doing this research at your end and it's going to tell you that whom to license the patent, he has spent a lot of time. He has spent, maybe years in developing that technology, and it becomes really difficult to, for an inventor or for a person who has spent all his years, his experiences in a particular domain to think outside the domain. So, so identifying the right set of, companies needs an open mind when you're researching.
Okay. So I think if we break down, it is more about, there's no platform, but I think if you know the technology of the patent, the best is to think of the value chain. So value chain is a good example of it, that because value chain is all about how this technology would be used by the companies before using your product and after using your product. So that is one way how you can list down the companies that might be using it. The second could be listing down the application areas. So when I say about application areas, let's take an example of FedEx. So you think about logistic, that means delivery. So which are the other application areas where delivery might be happening? One is food. And when you talk about food, the biggest, that comes into your mind is, of course, Domino's. Now, another, it could be like the companies like Amazon, who are not the pure play logistic company, but they are still doing a delivery, and they may be called as indirect competitors. So they are, again, would be a very good example which are not the logistic company that they might be using your technology. So I think it is an amalgamation of value chain analysis and figuring out the different applications where your technology could be applied. And then it is, an infringement analysis that you have to do yourself or involve another company that can produce claim charts for you. So coming over to the next question, I think next question, one of the question is that can the user get the presentation? So the answer is yes, that after this webinar, everybody is going to receive a recording of this webinar, and you are going to get both the presentation as well as the audio for your later, review. So the next question is it advisable? So this question is from Amardeep. So is it advisable for a company to abandon patents for technology which is outdated? Amazing question, not because I think this is what a lot of companies do. That means when they feel that a particular technology is outdated, they try to abandon those patents. And this is the first thing that is done because they want to cut off any expense that their department is doing in maintaining these patents, because you have to pay a huge money for maintaining them. So the question is what the company should do in such case. And I have a very interesting viewpoint or the strategy here, but I will bring on Muzammil first, what he wants to, if he has an interesting strategy to share, and then I will, I will convey my point, what I had in mind. So Muzammil, what do you think about this?
Before I share anything, I'd like to share a story. Once I was talking to one of our clients, and that it was start of the financial year, and they were looking for that which of the patents we do not want. So which of the patents we should kill. So the question was, they directly asked that, Muzammil, what do you think? Which are the patents that we should abandon? So I thought that you generally do this every year. So what are those patents which you have already abandoned last year? So he said that I just asked all of the, the product development team that which are the patents which you are not using nowadays. So it's more of like that the patents which are not of use to us, we are going to abandon those patents. However, I propose that let's do this, another thing this time. Let's analyze all those patents which your team feels are not of use to them. So the patents which are not of use to you guys, let us analyze those patents. Let us quickly check which of those patents can be applied or are being used in the industry other than your core domain. And he really liked that idea. So this was one of the strategies that we we adopted when we were giving a solution to one of our clients.
Okay. I think that means before abandoning the patents generally to outdated, there could still be companies, and you are saying that maybe your competitors may abandon them, but there are other companies who may still continue to use the old technology. Like right now, even if we are moving more towards 4G and 5G, there are still a lot of mobile phones that are working on 2G technology. So I think it is more about going after the direct competitors if they're using outdated, or going after completely different product lines like GPS devices or GPS receivers who, that does not require 4G. That still works on the old GPRS 2G technology. So I think that is one interesting viewpoint. But I have a little bit different opinion. What I figured out that if it is going to get outdated in next 2 years, then this is the right time to license or to sell those patents. That means rather than figuring or doing all of the things when the technology is already outdated, you will get no money for those patents. So the best is you do this analysis 2 years before. And for example, if you have to do right now, just figure out that which are the technologies that are going to get outdated in the next 5 years. You pick them right now, because right now it will give them, you'll get good value for those patents. And you can license them not just to your core competitors, or also to the non-core, because they'll still be using it. And so probably you will be able to make good amount of money before they get outdated. Some of the people, don't license when the technology is getting outdated because they know that the royalties will only be short-lived. So they sell those patents before the industry recognizes that they are going to get outdated. So I can see the next possible question is that how can we figure out that something is getting outdated? So there's a very good way. If you can make a hype curve of your industry. So hype curve means, I think we can cover about this hype curve in more detail in one of the next sessions. So hype curve is more about figuring out what technologies are about to get outdated and which are the new technologies that are about to come in the next few years and which have already been outdated. So if you know all of this, you can get to know, you can extract those patents out from your portfolio and make good money out of them. Either sell them or license them, or if you can't do both of these, then just abandon them. So that was all about what you can do about the outdated technology. So I think we are just maybe 5 minutes above our scheduled time. So if you have any questions, you can directly reply to my email. I think all of you have my email address, and we will answer your questions on email offline. And we will be having another very interesting session tomorrow, sharing another non-traditional strategy. If you are available, it would be good to attend. Otherwise, we'll also share the recording with all of you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.